Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody, depending on where you're from. This is Garrett Zimmer. Welcome to the MinecraftEdu After Chat. We are joined by the one and only Douglas Kiang. Doug, say hi.
Hey, how are you? Nice to see everybody.
So, if you guys are not familiar with the EduChat format, we run the Minecraft EduChat every single Tuesday at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So what we do is we cover topics related to Minecraft and education, and this is the After Chat portion where we get a chance to go a little bit more in depth with our host of the evening, Douglas here. So tonight's topic was covering the topic of, actually, Doug, why don't you tell us what the topic you chose for tonight was?
Yeah, sure thing, Garrett. So I'm Douglas Kiang. And Garrett, thank you so much for hosting me, and thank you so much to everybody who participated in the Twitter chat. It was just wonderful to see the variety of ideas and opinions and advice. And I don't know about you, I came away more inspired and more excited about kind of diving into this with my students. So what I've been really interested in is in creating a community in the classroom that kind of enhances the study of whatever it is that we do. I've been actively trying to change my classroom from being one where I'm mostly standing at the front of the room and lecturing to kids. I've been trying to get away from that. I teach in the high school, so of course, to a certain extent, we need to teach content. But I actually find inspiration in a lot of my colleagues in a junior school who are teaching, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, because I think elementary teachers get it. Let's create a learning environment in the classroom with lots of stimulating activities, and then let's let kids play, because a lot of really good learning comes through play. And so, I teach high school. I don't have an elementary school classroom, but I do have Minecraft. And so for me, if I can create a stimulating kind of environment that kids can interact with each other in a safe way, then I find that a lot of great learning happens. I find that kids learn how to trust each other. They learn how to help each other. They learn how to develop empathy. And these are all things that can really affect what we learn in the classroom. It can make our learning better. And so that was kind of the theme that I brought to this, was this idea of how can we create a better learning community.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the whole idea of kids starting to learn how to engage with each other. We talk about these ideas of digital citizenship in the younger years. We talk about these ideas of student-centered learning. We talk about these ideas of growth mindset and, of course, whole child learning. And it has a tendency to stop at a certain point when we then focus directly on curriculum or content. But the challenge is, if kids are not in a comfortable environment, the content is going to go in one ear and out the other anyway. And with high school, we know as well as anybody that that period of time, we've all been kids, we've all been teenagers, that period of time is traumatic to begin with. So
Absolutely.
if the classroom's not a comfortable place, we're in a dangerous position. So that's great. We're going to, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think more and more what the research is showing is that learning is fundamentally a social endeavor. And so to just teach content absent the kind of education about how do you negotiate understanding, how do you work with other people, how do you appreciate differences in opinion, if we don't have that layer on top, then the content is, much less valuable, especially since content alone is so abundant. It's really, we're trying to teach kids how to make good decisions about appropriate and ethical use of content, about how to construct new content by gathering and collating and curating sources from everywhere else with respect to where those sources are coming from. I mean, those are all very important facets of what you're talking about when you talk about digital citizenship.
Yeah. Take it even a step further. So my background is at the college university level, sitting on the boards and working with student advocacy groups and student engagement groups and trying to figure out between professors kind of how do we really sort of bring students up to the level that we need to put them at when they come and apply for a job with me or with Microsoft or with Google or whoever. And one of the biggest challenges that we faced was this idea of teamwork. when kids are getting out of high school, the team element that's required in a business that we have to bring them up to in that university level is so dramatically different from the team elements that we're seeing in high schools. So I'm thinking that your process, your approach for developing this collaborative learning community can only be a support to their careers in college and their careers in the future. So before we jump a little bit deeper into some of these topic points, especially as they relate to Minecraft and those teachers who are either using it in a grade level or a grade school level or are brand new to it, let's cover a few of the questions. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to list all the questions that we covered tonight. So Q1 was introduce yourself, Q0 was introduce yourself, of course. Q1 was how do we go about establishing group norms and rules? Who creates them? How are they reinforced? What kinds of activities do you use to get students to learn, share, and collaborate? Because that sharing method, as you're talking, is very important. Number 3 was what are your top 2 or 3 tips for getting students to play nicely together? Which is a really good question that you came up with, Doug. And Q4 is how do you engage students who aren't comfortable in Minecraft? The reality is not every kid is going to be a Minecraft aficionado, and sometimes we have to kind of help them bridge into that. And Q5, of course, the last question is what opportunities might we create for students to share their work in Minecraft with others and with the world? Because that's one of the most important things out there is this concept of open source, sharing our materials, sharing our learning so that we can get this crowdsourced collaborative growth for our entire society, not just small cohorts. So with those questions in mind, what are some of the things that came up to you that were fantastic conversations around this? Maybe some points that some of the educators out there were making. What stood out to you?
Well, I think one of the effects when you put kids in a Minecraft world is you're going to see certain behavior in that world. And there's going to be good behavior, there's going to be some not so good behavior. And so one of the interesting ways that this discussion kind of diverged a little bit was in different educators' approach to it. And to me, it's really more a question of classroom management and what your style is. Some people said, well, you need to make sure that there are rules, and then when kids break the rules, they should be punished or put in a Minecraft jail. And other people were, well, you take everything as a learning moment and an opportunity to learn more. And so even the negative behaviors can be positive learning. There can be positive learning outcomes from that. If you take the offender and you lock them away in a jail and they never have to face the consequences, or if you ban them entirely from the server, then there's no opportunity to kind of deal with the consequences of their actions. Right. And, I can tell a story what happened here in our school when we did Minecraft. One year we had a Minecraft world that was sort of running persistently and kids had built stuff. And I realized one evening as I'm flying over the landscape that there was an enormous swastika that somebody had built on their lawn. And so I flew down and I landed and I kind of looked at it and I knew whose house it was. So I texted them and I said, can you come into the world? So a few minutes later, he kind of appears next to me and we kind of both gaze up at this enormous 40-foot tall swastika. And he goes, Mr. Kiang, I didn't build that. And I said, okay, well then who did? He said, well, I don't know. So I was able to determine who actually built it. And we called that kid in and he wouldn't admit to it. He said, no, I didn't do that. But we were able to tell, we knew exactly, from looking at the logs, we knew that he had done it.
Yeah.
And the most we could get out of him was, well, I don't understand, if I did build it, I don't understand why it's such a big deal. Because, this kid isn't even Jewish. At which point, I just kind of hit the roof. And I was like, this kid has no place in our community. And we need to either kick him out of the class or certainly ban him from the server. And it took a lot of conversations before, number one, he admitted it. And then secondly, we had to really explain to him what that symbol means. Mm. And it got to the point where the question for us as adults were almost more along the lines of, if you're functionally illiterate, can you be accused of hate speech? Because I think he had just seen it in so many different Minecraft servers, public servers that he'd gone on, and people just say all kinds of things, and he had become sort of immune to it. And for him, it was just a goof.
Yeah.
So it was an opportunity to have a really in-depth conversation about, this is a symbol that means terrible things to a large group of people, and by co-opting this symbol, you're essentially signing on with hate speech. and it wasn't his intent at all. And the other kid, I don't know if this makes it better or worse, he wasn't offended by it at all. He said, "Oh yeah, it was just a goof. I didn't mind at all." And it was sort of like, well, gee, you should have minded. So it became an opportunity to have a larger
Yeah.
conversation, right? And the thing is, I find that Minecraft is so powerful. It's a catalyst for powerful discussion and powerful learning.
Yeah.
And he needed to own it. And we had a conversation about it, and it took a while before he realized sort of the gravity of what he did. But that conversation, and in fact, our awareness of that would never even have happened if it weren't for the fact that he were in our server in Minecraft.
Yeah.
And the reality is our kids are on Minecraft servers everywhere. But most servers that are public, you can go on, say horrible things, do terrible things, get banned, and then there's 100 more that you can join. You never
And
have to stay in that community and face the consequences of it. That's the learning moment that we have as teachers.
And
We
even,
have to, allow our kids to have to face the consequences of the actions that they do. That's how we guide their behavior for when they are on these larger public servers.
yeah. So even beyond just the fact that, there's no accountability in those, there's no opportunity for conversation in a Minecraft server when there's 1,000 different people talking and chatting, and, all these negative things that come up just constantly go through. We spoke about that when we were kind of designing last night's questions for next week's chat. The idea of griefing. And how this, this pervasive mentality of bad teammanship, bad sportsmanship it pervades the digital sports space. But there's two sort of elements that I really like about that story, Doug. And the one is that the student learned. They gave this beautiful opportunity to encourage communication and encourage a broader understanding of how people outside of that group might be affected by something that you do. And it's a powerful digital citizenship lesson. But the secondary point is that there were two students involved in here, and both students didn't really get it. So you have the one who created the negative environment, unintentionally as it was, a goof, that's fine. And then you had the student who wasn't even necessarily affected by it until it was brought up. So it's just powerful learning there. So it kind of brings it back to question one of establishing group rules and norms and deciding how you're going to enforce those or reinforce those, whether it's going to be reactionary and a sharp stick, get out of our server kind of thing, or whether it's going to be a group environment of, hey, let's kind of explore why this is bad or could potentially be bad. So how do you really grow that sort of support with your
it's
students?
hard. We tried to have kids brainstorm rules, and the kids couldn't come up with very many. They came up with some basic ones like, don't break other people's stuff, and if you break something by accident, fix it. But they couldn't really think of very much. And and then we just went into the world we started building. And then stuff just happened in there that we had to deal with. Like one kid ended up building these huge pixel art sculptures, and I had some kids complaining, and they said, I built my house with this beautiful view of the ocean, and now I got to stare at the back of Winnie the Pooh's head. You have to make him take it down. And at that point, I said, well, what rule is he breaking? We said, don't break stuff. We didn't say don't build stuff. And he said, I know, that's why it's not gone yet, because there's a rule that says I can't break this enormous thing of Winnie the Pooh, but it's ugly and I want to get rid of it. So we had a conversation about that, and some people said, well, he shouldn't be allowed to build ugly stuff, just really nice stuff. But they couldn't agree on what part, what people liked and what they didn't like. And he just said, well, it's all art. And so there are some really interesting conversations that we got into. And one of the kids, I remember at one point, told me, he said, I realized something. He said, when you first asked us about rules, we couldn't come up with any because no one had broken any rules yet. So now I feel like maybe the laws that we have only exist because at some point somebody broke it before it was a law. And I thought that was a really insightful comment about how laws are formed in a society. And these are great learning outcomes that we're trying to get kids to come across, but they're not going to get that through a textbook. We have this amazing tool called Minecraft where kids can personally experience all of these things. And again, the whole community idea is this, and we see it with Twitter chats or with anywhere else where we have a group of people. The instances of griefing go down the more people know each other and the more social investment you have in belonging to that community. We as teachers, when we have a classroom of kids, we have this incredible opportunity because we have a captive audience of kids who have to be with each other every day for the next 6 months or a year. So on the one hand, I'm afraid of opening up a world sometimes because I don't want to see swastikas, or I don't want kids to make
Of course.
mistakes. I want to protect them from making mistakes. But then again, if they are going to make mistakes, and we know that kids are going to make, they're going to mess up, there's no more supportive place to do it than in your classroom, where as a teacher, you can help kids either decide what's ethical behavior, decide what isn't, or help them deal with the consequences of making bad decisions. This is a case where not only do we have the opportunity to do it, because we have the opportunity, we have to be doing more of this. We have to be helping mentor kids around it.
I'm gonna take that one step further. It's gonna be along the same line of thought. As we were talking in the Twitter chat about these rules and norms, some of the conversations led towards how exactly what you're talking about, how some of these norms will develop and evolve over time based on things that have happened. And this is the way our society works, at least our North American society, a very democratic process with common law standards where, laws change, norms change. We look at the great vast norm of, we're in this. Now, some people may be against it, but I'm going to use it as an example. The idea of transgenders, right? So we have this changing norm where we're starting to use pronouns like Z instead of just he and she. And this conversation is happening. I'm not making a political commentary on, what's right versus what's wrong. Everybody has their opinion on that and is entitled to that. But we do see our society grow and change. And what better way than having students in their own little society in a safe environment to start to really recognize that, especially now we're in an election day, that they have the power to implement positive norm change, positive social changes as they move forward past their high school careers or their grade school careers.
Absolutely. And if I can talk sort of nuts and bolts of Minecraft a bit,
yeah,
for people
please.
who are... So in Minecraft, you have two modes. You've got creative mode, and then you've got survival mode. And one way, we see a lot of building, constructive building. You have people working in teams to build stuff in creative mode where you have unlimited resources. But what I find is really interesting about Minecraft is when you put kids in survival mode with limited resources, because there's no incentive to work together unless you're in a situation with limited resources. Because when you have unlimited resources, you don't have to work with anybody.
Hallelujah.
So it's harder. So I'll start kids in creative. I'll start them there. Because you can get little lessons about cooperation and everything else there. But ultimately, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to move them into survival, where as the admin, I'm not giving them anything. And so I've actually got to close with this one idea. And that is, there's a group project that I gave kids 1 year to build me an underwater office. And so basically, my idea was I just wanted to be underwater and I wanted it to be really big. And I kind of let the kids go and let them kind of think about deciding it. And I wasn't going to give them anything. So the kids right away had to create a collaborative document with an inventory to see, okay, who's got which stuff, because they knew they'd need a lot of glass because they were going to build a dome underwater. And then they figured out, okay, well, we don't have enough glass on hand, so we're going to have to make our own glass. So they formed teams, and some kids went out and mined for sand, and other kids contributed as much coal as they had, and they did some math, and they figured out how much glass half a dome would take. And they decided what they were going to do was build the entire sphere on a wooden platform over the ocean. And then they would burn out the wooden platform so that the sand falls straight down to the bottom of the ocean. And then they went down and they covered it over with glass. And then they got rid of the sand on the inside. And that was their plan. And it was an audacious plan. And they managed to do the whole thing, but they had to have teams. And the kids, basically what was exciting for me was I just sat back and let the kids organize. We knew what needed to be done, and we had to break it up into all of these different separate tasks. We had to have a security team because it's survival. So you have skeletons showing up to take pot shots at you while you're trying to build, which is, the indignity of that, you're trying to build something important. And in the end, they actually managed to pull this off. It was about a week's worth of work, and they filmed it. Everybody had their whole camera view, and then they made a music video out of it. So there was something for everybody to do. But that was what I realized when I did the survey afterwards, and I asked the kids about it. They said they enjoyed it because it wasn't what they call a fake group project.
Yes.
And a fake group project is when, as a teacher, I give the kids a task that can be done by any one person in the group, but I give it to a group of 4 kids because it's supposed to be a group project. But kids right away see through that. And so usually the one person who's the most type A or the most concerned about the grade just grabs it and does the whole thing and gets it done. But this was a project that was incredibly complex. You needed kids who were good builders. You needed kids who could fight. You needed kids who, had a lot of resources. You needed planners. You needed architects and designers. So this was something that no one person could have done this project. You needed to have a lot of different skills. And my biggest goal for the kids is to understand that a functional group, or a really well-functioning group, combines the tasks and abilities of lots of different kinds of people. And the strongest groups are, in fact, the most diverse groups. And so appreciating diversity, I think, is a really big takeaway from this. And so I think for me, when I think about Minecraft as a learning community, those are the kinds of collaborative projects that I'm constantly looking to challenge kids to build. I give them something that I think is impossible. And time after time, my kids surprise me.
So my background is in senior business leadership. And that smacks of C-level executive use of people and delegation of responsibilities. And that is exactly what, when I'm hiring as an employer, that is exactly the type of student that I want. That's exactly the type of team member that I want. And I love the way that you put it, that, the creative mode it definitely has its piece. Mark and I have talked about this many times on the EdChats, that survival is really where you want the kids to be. It's more authentic to their game, and it is their game. That's the one thing we have to realize, that they get value out of this game, not because of just the building, once they get it past a certain age point. But they see it as a game. And if we can align that closer and maximize and leverage that to get the team elements and the learning, the real conversations that we want, then we're doing them a much better service, and ourselves, I think, because retention's going to happen in those team experiences much more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Doug, I know you have to go, and I know that everybody here is kind of on the get-go to try and figure out what's going on with the election. I hope that you guys are all driving safe, and I hope that you guys realize, if this is your first time being with us in a MinecraftEdu After Chat, we do hold Minecraft Ed Chats every single Tuesday evening at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and the After Chat happens after, where we get to hang out with our host for a little bit. So before I say goodbye to Douglas and let him go, I do want to update you guys on next week's Twitter chat, we are going to be joined by Braun Stuckey, Stephen Isaacs. It's going to be the biggest group that we've had so far.
Awesome.
We have Mark Suter, we have Geek Mom and Son, and we've got Mark and myself. And I hope I'm not missing anybody. I don't think I am. But the topic is going to be on esports and how Minecraft can really enhance and empower students in an esports environment. So how do we get into that competitive side of gaming to develop the skills that our students really need to become productive members of society and work within teams? And I think it's a perfect segue to the conversation we just had tonight. So I'm Garrett Zimmer. I'm going to say thank you guys very much. Douglas, any last words? That sounds ominous.
No, thank you, Garrett, so much for the opportunity, and I really did enjoy interacting with everybody on the Twitter chat, and I'm looking forward to many more great conversations. So thank you.
Excellent. And I want to thank you on behalf of Mark Grundell, my partner in the MinecraftEdu chat, who's not able to join us right now. He's off to a 3-day event, so he's got to be up at 3:30 in the morning. Please wish him all of our best. But I want to say thank you so much for taking the time tonight to meet with us, Douglas, to handle the Twitter chat like a true professional that you are. And, of course, the After Chat, the conversations with you are always astounding, and the anecdotes you bring to the table are fantastic. So we all learned something from you. Thank you again, and thank you to everybody out there. We will see you next week.
Thank you.